Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the human ship Harmony's Edge and watched the massive space station grow larger on the main screen. Nexus Prime was huge, bigger than any city on Earth. Its metal walls gleamed under the light of 3 different suns, and ships from dozens of worlds moved around it like busy insects. Jake had been to Nexus Prime many times, but he still felt nervous before every Galactic Council meeting. Today felt different, though. Today, Ambassador Lisa Grant was finally going to ask the question that had bothered humans for 50 years. "Captain, we're getting clearance to dock," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station. She was young, maybe 25, with short, brown hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Take us in, Amy," Jake said. He turned to look at Ambassador Grant, who stood near the back of the bridge reading from a thick book. The book was the Galactic Codex, the set of laws that all space-traveling species had to follow. Lisa Grant was a smart woman in her 40s with gray hair and a calm way of speaking that made other people listen. She had been Earth's main representative to the galaxy for 10 years, and she was good at her job. But there was one thing about the galactic laws that she had never understood. "Still reading that same page?" Jake asked her. Lisa looked up and smiled. "Article 47, Section 12, the Weapon Restriction Law. I must have read it 1,000 times and it still doesn't make sense." Jake knew the law by heart. Every human who traveled in space did. It said that all beings who entered planetary forums or diplomatic areas had to give up their weapons. All beings except humans. Humans could keep their weapons anywhere they went in diplomatic space. "Maybe today we'll finally get an answer," Jake said. Lisa closed the book and walked over to stand beside him. "I hope so. It's been 50 years since first contact, Jake. 50 years of other species looking at us like we're some kind of puzzle they can't solve." The ship docked with a soft bump. Jake could see alien ships all around them through the windows. There was a crystal ship from the Zephyrian homeworld, its walls looking like colored glass. Next to it floated a dark ship that belonged to the Kythera, the insect-like beings who lived in hives. Further away he could see the strange, glowing ships of the Luminari, beings made of pure energy who needed special containers to interact with solid matter. "All species ready for diplomatic entry," Amy reported. "They're all following standard weapon surrender protocols." That meant every alien on those ships was removing their weapons and putting them in secure storage before they could enter the station. Even ceremonial weapons like the crystal blades of Zephyrian nobles or the honor spikes of Kythera warriors had to be left behind. But not humans. Humans could walk into any diplomatic meeting with their laser pistols, their combat knives, even their military rifles if they wanted to. It made no sense, and it made other species nervous. "Ambassador, your security team is ready," said Danny Price, Lisa's young aide. Danny was thin and pale, with nervous energy that made him fidget with his hands when he talked. "Security Chief Mike Taylor says they'll stay armed as usual." "As the law allows," Lisa said, but Jake could hear the confusion in her voice. They left the ship and walked through the docking bay toward the main council chambers. The halls of Nexus Prime were wide enough for the largest alien species to move comfortably. Jake saw Zephyrians floating past, their crystal bodies catching the light like living rainbows. A group of Kythera moved in formation, their insect, legs clicking on the metal floor in perfect rhythm. All of them had left their weapons behind, all of them except the humans. The council chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in a circle around a central speaking area. Each species had their own section designed for their particular needs. The Luminari had special energy containment fields. The aquatic depones had water-filled tanks. Humans had simple chairs, just like they might use on Earth. Elder Vex High of the Zephyrians was already in his place, his crystal body humming with soft music. Commander Zigtar of the Kythera sat perfectly still, his compound eyes watching everything at once. The other species took their places one by one. At the center of the chamber sat the Keeper of Laws, a being so old that no one remembered what species he had originally been. His body was covered in a dark robe, and his face was hidden in shadow. Some said he had been there when the Galactic Council was first formed thousands of years ago. The quarterly session of the Galactic Council will now begin. the keeper said in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The meeting started like all the others. Trade disputes, border agreements, scientific exchanges. Lisa waited patiently through each topic, but Jake could see she was getting ready to speak. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap, and she kept glancing at the weapon on her belt. Finally, during the open forum section, Lisa stood up. "Keeper of laws," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "I request permission to address a long-standing question." The chamber fell silent. Jake noticed that several aliens shifted nervously in their seats. Elder Vexhi's crystal body stopped humming. Commander Ziktar's antennae twitched. "Permission." "Granted, Ambassador of Terra," the keeper said. Lisa took a deep breath. "For 50 years since humanity first joined this council, we have been puzzled by Article 47, Section 12 of the Galactic Codex. This law states that all beings entering diplomatic spaces must surrender their weapons, but it makes an exception for humans. We have never understood why." The silence in the chamber grew heavier. Jake could feel the tension like electricity in the air. "We are grateful for this trust," Lisa continued. "But we believe it is time we understood the reason behind it. Why are humans the only species allowed to carry weapons into these sacred diplomatic spaces?" For a long moment, no one spoke. Jake watched as the aliens looked at each other with what seemed like nervous glances. The Luminari's energy forms flickered faster than usual. The Deepones bubbled anxiously in their tanks. Finally, the Keeper of Laws leaned forward in his chair. "The answer to your question, Ambassador Grant, lies in a truth about your species that you have yet to fully understand about yourselves," he said slowly. "A truth that we have observed, studied, and marveled at for half a century." The Keeper stood up, his robes flowing around him like shadows. "If you truly wish to know the answer to this question, you must be prepared to learn something about humanity that may change how you see yourselves forever." Lisa looked at Jake, then back at the Keeper. "We're ready to hear the truth." The Keeper nodded slowly. "Then follow me to the restricted archives. There you will learn why the Galactic Council fears every species in the galaxy except one." The Keeper of Laws led them through corridors that Jake had never seen before. These halls were older than the main sections of Nexus Prime, with walls made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Their footsteps echoed strangely, as if the sound was being stretched and twisted by the walls themselves. Ambassador Lisa Grant walked beside the Keeper, with Danny Price close behind her taking notes on his portable computer. Jake followed with Dr. Karen Bell, the expedition's historian. Karen was a quiet woman in her 50s who knew more about galactic history than most aliens did. "I've studied galactic records for 20 years, Karen whispered to Jake as they walked, "but I've never been allowed into the restricted archives." "How restricted are we talking?" Jake asked. "Information that could destabilize governments," the Keeper said without turning around. His hearing was apparently much better than they had thought. "Records of events that most species prefer to forget." They reached a massive door made of the same dark metal as the walls. The Keeper placed his hand on a scanner, and the door split open with a deep humming sound. Beyond was a chamber filled with floating holographic displays and storage units that stretched up into shadows. "Welcome to the Archive of Forbidden History," the Keeper said. "Here are the records of why the Galactic Council was truly formed." The Keeper waved his hand and the air filled with holographic images. Jake saw space battles, burning planets, and ships destroying each other with weapons that could crack moons in half. "This period is known as the Weapon Wars," the Keeper explained. "For 3,000 years, every species that reached the stars brought their conflicts with them. They fought over resources, territory, trade routes, and old grudges that went back to their home worlds." Lisa watched the images with growing horror. "The scale of destruction was beyond anything your species has ever imagined." The Keeper finished. Entire solar systems were destroyed, billions died. The galaxy nearly destroyed itself through endless war. Dr. Karen Bell stepped closer to one of the displays. It showed a timeline with hundreds of different species and their conflicts. Every single spacefaring civilization went through this pattern. Every single one, the keeper confirmed. They developed technology for war, used it to leave their home planets, and then used it to fight each other among the stars. Danny Price looked up from his note-taking. But something changed, obviously, or we wouldn't have the Galactic Council today. The keeper nodded. The survivors realized that they had to find a way to prevent future wars, or there would be nothing left of galactic civilization. They formed the council and created the most important law in galactic history. A new hologram appeared, showing the text of the original weapon restriction law. Jake read it carefully. It was much longer than the current version, with detailed explanations and exceptions. All weapons to be surrendered before entering any diplomatic space, Karen read aloud. No exceptions for any species for any reason under any circumstances. That was the original law, the keeper said, and for 2,000 years it worked. Diplomacy replaced warfare. Trade replaced conquest. The galaxy finally had peace. But then humans came along, Lisa said, and you changed the law for us. Why? The keeper moved to another display. This one showed Earth as seen from space, with human cities visible on the night side. When we first detected radio signals from your world, we began to study your species, as we had studied all the others. We expected to find the same pattern we had seen everywhere else. What pattern? Jake asked. Survival of the strongest, the keeper said. Every species that had reached the stars had evolved through constant conflict. Their strongest individuals survived to pass on their genes, while the weak died. This created beings who were excellent at fighting and terrible at trusting. Dr. Bell frowned. But humans evolved through conflict too. We had wars for thousands of years. Yes, the keeper said, but you also evolved something else. Something we had never seen before in any species. A new set of images appeared, showing scenes from human history. Jake saw ancient battles, but he also saw something else. Humans helping wounded enemies, soldiers sharing food with prisoners, people risking their lives to save strangers. You developed the ability to choose not to fight, the keeper said. More than that, you developed the ability to use your strength to protect the weak instead of destroying them. Lisa stared at the images. You're saying other species can't do that? They can learn to control their violent instincts through discipline and law, the keeper explained. But humans seem to have evolved a natural instinct to protect others, even at the cost of their own survival. This was so unusual that many of our scientists thought our observations were wrong. Danny Price looked confused. But if you thought we were different, why didn't you just ask us about it when we first made contact? The keeper's shadowy face turned toward him. Because we needed to be sure. The survival of galactic civilization depended on being absolutely certain about your species' nature. Karen moved to another display that was showing what looked like test results. You tested us, didn't you? Extensively, the keeper admitted. From the moment your first ships left Earth's solar system, we were watching and testing. But the real test came 50 years ago, during what you call the cultural exchange on Kepler 442b. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. That wasn't just a cultural exchange, was it? No, the keeper said. It was the most important test in galactic history. A test to determine whether humans could be trusted with the power to carry weapons in diplomatic spaces. The holographic displays changed again, showing the surface of Kepler 442b 50 years ago. Jake could see human ships landing alongside vessels from dozens of other species. He recognized some of the human ships from history books. Admiral Roy, Scott and his fleet, Lisa said quietly. The first large-scale human-alien gathering. The first and most crucial test, the keeper corrected. We created a scenario designed to reveal your species' true nature when faced with a choice between self-preservation and protecting others. The images showed humans and aliens gathering in a large clearing on the planet's surface. Everyone looked relaxed and friendly. But Jake noticed something odd about the alien formations. They were positioned in ways that would be hard to defend. You made the aliens vulnerable on purpose, he realized. Every alien species was positioned according to the weapon surrender protocols, the keeper explained. They were completely defenseless. The humans, following the special exception that we had secretly written into the law just for them, remained fully armed. Dr. Bell leaned forward. What kind of test was this supposed to be? A test of character, the keeper said. We staged an attack. The holographic scene changed, showing armed raiders suddenly appearing around the gathering. Jake watched as the fake attackers moved toward the defenseless aliens while the armed humans had to make a choice. They could defend themselves and escape, leaving the aliens to die. They could fight only for their own people. Or they could do something that no other species in galactic history had ever done. They protected everyone, Lisa whispered. On the display, Jake watched human soldiers form protective circles around alien delegates. He saw human medics treating wounded aliens before treating wounded humans. He saw human ships positioning themselves between the attackers and alien evacuation vessels, taking damage to protect beings they had just met. Lieutenant Commander Beth Lewis ordered her people to shield the alien delegates with their own bodies, the keeper said. Security Chief Mike Taylor coordinated a defense that prioritized alien safety over human safety. Medic Nancy White treated 17 different alien species before she would allow treatment for her own wounds. Danny Price looked amazed. They were willing to die for complete strangers? Strangers from different worlds with different biologies, different cultures, different everything. The keeper confirmed. And your people didn't hesitate. Karen shook her head slowly. No other species has ever done anything like that? No, other species could do anything like that, the keeper said. When faced with mortal danger, every other species reverts to the same survival instinct. Save your own people first. Worry about others later, if at all. The images faded, leaving them standing in the dim light of the archives. The test on Kepler 442b proved what we had hoped but never dared to believe, the keeper continued. Humans were the first species in galactic history that could be trusted with weapons in diplomatic spaces, because you were the first species that would use those weapons to protect others instead of just yourselves. Lisa looked around at her team, then back at the keeper. So the weapon exception isn't really an exception at all. No, the keeper said. It's the beginning of something much more important, something the galaxy has been waiting for since the weapon wars ended. Jake felt like the ground was shifting under his feet. What are you talking about? The keeper began walking toward another section of the archives. Come, there is more you need to understand about your role in galactic civilization. Much more. The keeper led them deeper into the archives, past rows of data storage units that hummed with contained information. The air here felt heavy with secrets, and Jake could sense that they were about to learn something that would change everything. The test on Kepler 442b was not the only evaluation of your species, the keeper said as they walked. We have been studying humans for 50 years, documenting every interaction, every conflict, every diplomatic encounter. Dr. Karen Bell looked around at the vast collection of data. You've been watching us this whole time? We had to be certain, the keeper replied. The decision to trust any species with weapons in diplomatic spaces could not be made lightly. Too much depended on getting it right. They stopped at a large display terminal and the keeper activated it with a touch. The screen filled with files marked with human names and dates. Jake recognized some of them. Famous diplomatic missions, trade negotiations, even a few military conflicts. Show us, Ambassador Lisa Grant said quietly. Show us what you learned. The keeper touched the screen and holographic recordings began to play around them. Jake found himself watching scenes from the past 50 years of human-alien contact, but from perspectives he had never seen before. The first recording showed a trade dispute between humans and the Zephyrians over mining rights to an asteroid field. Jake remembered reading about this in history books. The official story was that humans had negotiated a fair split of the resources, but the recording showed more than that. It showed Captain Roy Scott, the same admiral from the Kepler 442b test, sitting across from a Zephyrian negotiator. The alien was clearly desperate. His people needed the rare metals in those asteroids to repair their failing ships. We could take the entire field, Scott said to his aide in the recording. Our ships outnumber theirs 3-1 and we're better armed. But we won't, the aide replied. It wasn't a question. No, Scott agreed. They need those metals more than we do. We'll take what we need and make sure they get enough to fix their problems. The recording faded, and another took its place. This one showed a human patrol ship finding a damaged Cathera vessel drifting in space. The Cathera were technically enemies at the time, having recently attacked a human colony. Jake watched as Captain Lisa Barnes ordered her crew to rescue the alien survivors, even though it meant using their limited medical supplies and oxygen. "Commander, these are hostile aliens," her security chief said in the recording. "They're also dying," Barnes replied. "We help them." Even though they attacked New Portland, especially because they attacked New Portland, maybe if we show them mercy, they'll think twice about attacking us again. More recordings played showing similar scenes over and over. Humans choosing to help instead of harm. Humans sharing resources instead of hoarding them. Humans protecting alien civilians during conflicts even when those aliens came from enemy worlds. Danny Price was taking notes as fast as he could. "This is incredible. You've documented every major human-alien interaction for 50 years. Every major interaction and thousands of minor ones," the keeper confirmed. "We needed to be absolutely certain that the pattern we observed was genuine and consistent." A new recording began, showing a scene that made Jake's stomach turn. It was from the Centauri Border War, a conflict between humans and the aggressive Ravager species. Human colony ships were evacuating civilians while warships held off the attackers. In the recording, Commander Mike Taylor's ship was badly damaged and outnumbered. His crew could have escaped using their faster engines, but that would have meant leaving behind a transport full of Ravager prisoners they had captured earlier. "Sir, we need to go now," his tactical officer said. "If we don't leave, we'll all die." Taylor looked at the screen showing the alien prisoners in their holding cells. "What about them?" "They're enemies, sir. Ravagers who would kill us without hesitation. But they're also prisoners under our protection," Taylor said. "We don't abandon prisoners." The recording showed Taylor's ship taking massive damage as it defended the prisoner transport until both vessels could escape to safety. Dr. Bell shook her head in amazement. He risked his entire crew to save enemy prisoners. This pattern repeated itself in every conflict humans were involved in, the keeper said. "You would fight when necessary, but you always tried to minimize casualties on both sides. You treated enemies with mercy, protected the weak, and shared resources even when you could have kept them for yourselves." Lisa studied the data scrolling past on the screens. "You're saying no other species does this?" "We have records going back 10,000 years, the keeper replied. "Some species learn to control their violent impulses through strict laws and social conditioning. Some develop elaborate honor codes that limit how they fight. But in moments of real crisis, when survival instincts take over, they all revert to the same basic pattern. Protect your own first, destroy threats, take what you need." Another recording began. This one showed a human diplomatic mission to the aquatic Deepone homeworld. Jake remembered this incident. A terrorist attack had damaged the city's life support systems, and both humans and aliens were trapped underwater as oxygen levels dropped. In the recording, Ambassador Jennifer Hayes was coordinating the evacuation. There were only enough escape pods for about half the people in the building. "Humans first," her security chief said. "We can't risk losing our diplomatic team." Hayes looked around at the terrified aliens. "No. Children first, regardless of species. Then the injured. Then everyone else. Ambassador, we could all die. Then we die doing the right thing." The recording showed human diplomats helping alien children into escape pods while water rose around them. Some of the humans didn't make it out, but they kept working until the last alien civilian was safe. Jake felt a strange mix of pride and sadness watching his fellow humans sacrifice themselves for strangers. How many times did this happen? In 50 years of contact, humans have been faced with survival choice scenarios 237 times, the keeper said. Situations where they had to choose between their own safety and the safety of others. "And?" Lisa asked. 237 times humans chose to protect others, even when it cost them their lives, even when the others were enemies, even when there was no possible benefit to themselves. Danny Price looked up from his notes. Zero exceptions. Zero exceptions, the Keeper confirmed. No other species in galactic history has a perfect record in such situations. Most species manage to overcome their survival instincts perhaps 60 to 70% of the time, and only for members of their own species. Dr. Bell moved to another terminal and started reviewing the data. This is impossible. Evolution doesn't work this way. Natural selection should favor individuals who put their own survival first. That's exactly what we thought, the Keeper said. Your species should not exist. By every law of biology and evolution that we understand, the trait you call heroism should have been eliminated from your gene pool millions of years ago. But it wasn't, Jake said. Not only was it not eliminated, it became stronger, the Keeper replied. Our xenobiologists believe that humans may have evolved past the normal limitations of survival-based evolution. You developed the ability to value abstract concepts like justice and mercy more than your own lives. Lisa walked to the center of the chamber and looked around at all the evidence surrounding them. So what does this mean? Why did you need to test us so thoroughly? The Keeper was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. Because we needed to be absolutely certain before we offered humanity the most important responsibility in galactic history, he said. The role that the galaxy has needed for thousands of years but never had a species capable of fulfilling. What role? Jake asked. The role of guardian, the Keeper said. The protector of galactic peace. The one species that can be trusted with weapons not because they won't use them, but because they will only use them to protect others. Amy Foster, who had been quiet throughout the tour, finally spoke up. You want us to be the galaxy's police force? Not police, the Keeper corrected. Guardians. Police enforce laws on their own people. We need something much more difficult and dangerous. We need someone who will stand between the innocent and those who would harm them, even when those innocents are complete strangers from hostile worlds. The weight of what the Keeper was saying began to sink in. Jake looked around at his team and saw the same realization dawning on their faces. You're asking us to risk our lives for people we've never met, Lisa said. We're asking you to do what you've already been doing for 50 years, the Keeper replied. The only difference is that now we want to make it official. The Keeper gestured for them to follow him to the deepest part of the archives. Here the walls were covered with scientific diagrams and evolutionary charts that hurt Jake's eyes to look at. The data was so complex that it seemed to shift and move when he tried to focus on it. Before we continue, the Keeper said, you need to understand exactly how impossible your species really is. Dr. Karen Bell approached one of the wall displays. It showed evolutionary trees for dozens of different species, all following similar patterns. These all look the same. Because they are the same, the Keeper explained. Every spacefaring species we have ever encountered follows the identical evolutionary path: survival of the strongest, competition for resources, elimination of weakness. A hologram appeared in the center of the room, showing a three-dimensional model of what looked like a DNA strand, but with structures that Jake didn't recognize. This is what we call the Universal Survival Code, the Keeper said. Every intelligent species develops this genetic pattern. It ensures that only the strongest, most aggressive, most successful individuals survive to reproduce. Danny Price peered at the model. So, all aliens are naturally aggressive? Not aggressive in the sense of being mean or cruel, the Keeper corrected, but they are all naturally self-preserving. When faced with danger, their first and strongest instinct is to protect themselves and their own kind. This is true for every species we have studied. Ambassador Lisa Grant studied the display carefully. Every species except humans? Humans have the Universal Survival Code too, the Keeper said. But you also have something else. Something that should be genetically impossible. The hologram changed, showing a human genetic structure alongside the alien ones. Jake could see the similarities, but there were also strange additional patterns in the human model. Dr. Frank Hayes, your mission xenobiologist, would be fascinated by this, the Keeper said. Humans have what our scientists call paradox genes. genetic structures that actively work against survival instinct. Dr. Bell looked confused. Genes that work against survival? That doesn't make sense. Exactly, the Keeper agreed. According to everything we know about evolution, these genes should have disappeared millions of years ago. Individuals who carried them should have died out because they would sacrifice themselves for others instead of fighting for their own survival. Jake thought about all the recordings they had seen, but they didn't die out. The trait got stronger. Much stronger, the Keeper confirmed. Our best xenobiologists have been studying this puzzle for 50 years. How can a species evolve to value the survival of strangers more than their own survival? A new display activated, showing brain scans from different species. The alien brains all looked similar, with certain areas lighting up in the same patterns. The human brains looked completely different. When faced with a choice between self-preservation and protecting others, most species show increased activity in the fear centers of their brain, the Keeper explained. Their minds are screaming at them to run, to hide, to save themselves. And humans? Lisa asked. Humans show increased activity in the reward centers. Your brains actually give you pleasure chemicals when you protect others, even at the cost of your own safety. Danny Price stared at the brain scans. You're saying we're biologically programmed to be heroes? More than that, the Keeper said. You're biologically rewarded for being heroes. Other species have to fight against their nature to be selfless. Humans have to fight against their nature to be selfish. Dr. Bell moved to another display showing historical data. This chart shows the development of different species over time. Most of them get more aggressive as they advance technologically. The more powerful a species becomes, the more dangerous they usually become to others, the Keeper agreed. This is why the weapon restriction laws exist. Give most species advanced weapons and they will eventually use them for conquest. Jake looked at the human data on the chart. The line was completely different from all the others. But humans get less aggressive as we get more powerful? Statistically, yes, the Keeper said. The more advanced your technology becomes, the more you use it to help others instead of harming them. This pattern is unique in galactic history. A new hologram appeared, showing various historical events from different worlds. Jake saw scenes of conquest, slavery, and destruction from dozens of different species. The Zephyrians enslaved 3 other species before they developed space travel, the Keeper explained. The Kithra wiped out all competing life forms on their home planet. The Luminary consumed the energy of their own sun and had to find new sources of power by taking it from other worlds. And humans? Lisa asked. Humans are the only species that developed global government before developing interstellar travel. You solved most of your own planet's problems before you tried to solve problems on other worlds. Dr. Bell was reading data from another terminal. This says that most species don't develop effective medical care until after they reach space. They focus on weapons first, medicine second, the Keeper explained. Humans developed advanced medical care first, then used it to help other species when you met them. Jake thought about all the times he had seen human medical teams treating aliens with injuries or diseases that humans had never encountered before. It had always seemed natural to him. You study us, you help us, you protect us, the Keeper continued. Even when we are hostile to you. Even when we offer you nothing in return. Even when helping us cost you resources or lives. Another display showed economic data. Jake could see trade agreements between humans and various alien species over the past 50 years. In every trade negotiation, humans have accepted terms that were less favorable to them than they could have demanded, the Keeper said. You could have used your superior technology and military strength to force better deals, but you chose not to. Danny Price looked up from his notes. We're bad at business? You're good at business that benefits everyone instead of just yourselves, the Keeper corrected. This is another trait that makes no evolutionary sense. Successful species should maximize their own benefits. Lisa walked around the displays, taking in all the information. So we're genetic freaks who shouldn't exist. You're evolutionary miracles who represent hope for the entire galaxy, the Keeper said. For thousands of years we believed that intelligence and compassion were incompatible. That any species smart enough to reach the stars would be too aggressive to be trusted with that power. But we proved that wrong, Jake said. You proved that evolution can move beyond pure survival instinct, the Keeper agreed. You proved that a species can become powerful enough to dominate others and choose not to. You proved that intelligence can lead to wisdom instead of just cleverness. Dr. Bell was studying genetic comparisons on her screen. This data suggests that the human capacity for sacrifice actually increases as we encounter more alien species. Another impossible trait, the Keeper said. Most species become more suspicious and hostile as they encounter more aliens. Different biology, different values, different ways of thinking. These differences usually create fear and conflict. But humans get more protective? Lisa asked. The more species you encounter, the more you seem to view yourselves as guardians of all life in the galaxy, the Keeper confirmed. You don't just protect humans, or species that are similar to humans. You protect everyone. A final display, activated, showing a map of the galaxy with markers indicating various conflicts and diplomatic crises over the past 50 years. Every time there has been a threat to galactic peace, humans have been involved in stopping it, the Keeper said. Not because you were asked to help, but because you couldn't stand by and watch others suffer. Jake studied the map. There were dozens of markers, and in every case humans had taken risks to help resolve conflicts between other species. We never realized we were doing anything unusual, he said. That's exactly the point, the Keeper replied. For you, protecting others is as natural as breathing. You don't think about it, you don't debate it, you just do it. Lisa looked around at her team. So what happens now? What does the galaxy want from us? The Keeper's shadowy face turned toward her. The galaxy wants to offer you a responsibility that no species has ever been trusted with before. A responsibility that could save galactic civilization or destroy it, depending on whether we have judged your character correctly. What responsibility? Danny asked. The responsibility of power. Without oversight, the Keeper said. The authority to carry weapons anywhere, intervene in any conflict, and make decisions that affect billions of lives across hundreds of worlds. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. You want to give us unlimited power? We want to give you the power to do what you're already doing, but on a scale large enough to matter, the Keeper corrected. The power to truly protect galactic peace. And if we say no? Lisa asked. The Keeper was quiet for a long moment. Then the galaxy will continue as it has for the past 2,000 years. Peaceful, but fragile. Safe, but only because we limit everyone's power to harm others. And if we say yes? Then for the first time since the weapon wars ended, the galaxy will have someone strong enough to protect the weak from those who would harm them. The Keeper led them to the very heart of the restricted archives, to a chamber that seemed older than the rest of Nexus Prime. The walls here were made of some crystalline material that pulsed with soft light, and in the center stood a pedestal, holding a single book. The original Galactic Codex, the Keeper said reverently. Written in the aftermath of the weapon wars, when the survivors were desperate to prevent another galactic catastrophe. Ambassador Lisa Grant approached the pedestal carefully. The book was enormous, bound in metal that seemed to shift color as she looked at it. This is the real version? The complete version, the Keeper corrected. What your species has been reading for 50 years is the abbreviated public edition. This contains the full text, including sections that have been classified for 2,000 years. Dr. Karen Bell joined Lisa at the pedestal. Why classified? Because the complete codex reveals the true purpose of the Galactic Council, the Keeper said, and the real reason why humans were granted the weapon exception. The Keeper touched the book and it opened to a page near the middle. The text glowed softly, written in symbols that somehow translated themselves in Jake's mind as he read them. Article 47, Section 12, complete text, Lisa read aloud. By this law, all beings entering spaces designated for diplomatic purposes shall surrender all weapons, tools of war, and instruments of violence for the protection of all present and the preservation of peace. Danny Price looked confused. That's the same as the public version. Keep reading. The Keeper, said Lisa continued. However, should there arise a species capable of bearing arms without threat to peace, a species that would use strength not for conquest but for protection, such beings may enter all spaces while retaining their weapons, for they alone can be trusted with the power to wage war because they will only use it to defend peace. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Furthermore, Lisa read on, such a species, if verified through extensive observation and testing, shall be offered the role of guardian of galactic peace, with authority to intervene in conflicts, protect the innocent, and enforce galactic law throughout all territories and jurisdictions. Jake felt his heart racing. This was written 2,000 years ago. The founders of the Galactic Council believed that someday such a species might evolve, the Keeper explained. They wrote this law as hope for the future, never expecting to see it used. Dr. Bell studied the text more carefully. Guardian of Galactic Peace, what does that actually mean? The Keeper waved his hand and the walls around them filled with displays showing the current state of the galaxy. Jake saw trade routes, political boundaries, and dozens of potential conflict zones. It means the authority to go anywhere, at any time with whatever weapons you deem necessary, the Keeper said. It means the responsibility to intervene when peaceful species are threatened by aggressive ones. It means the power to enforce galactic law even against species that are stronger than those they prey upon. Lisa looked around at her team. That's an enormous responsibility. The most enormous responsibility in galactic history, the Keeper agreed. No species has ever been trusted with unlimited authority. The risks are too great. What risks? Danny asked. The risk that absolute power will corrupt absolutely, the Keeper said. The risk that even the most noble species will eventually use their authority for their own benefit. The risk that the Guardians will become the very thing they were meant to protect against. Amy Foster, who had been quiet throughout the tour, finally spoke up. So why offer it to us? Because the galaxy needs it, the Keeper said simply, and because you're the only species that might be able to handle it without becoming corrupted by it. A new display appeared, showing recent conflicts throughout the galaxy. Jake saw pirate raids on peaceful colonies, slave traders operating in lawless sectors, and resource wars between aggressive species and defenseless ones. The current system works for maintaining peace between major powers, the Keeper explained, but it doesn't protect the weak from the strong. When pirates attack colonies, we can offer diplomatic protests. When slavers raid primitive worlds, we can impose economic sanctions, but we can't actually stop them. Because everyone is disarmed in diplomatic spaces, Lisa realized, and because no one has the authority to use force to protect others, the Keeper confirmed. The weapon restriction laws prevent major wars, but they also prevent anyone from stopping smaller acts of violence and oppression. Dr. Bell was studying the conflict data. How many species are affected by this problem? Approximately 40% of all galactic civilizations are currently under threat from stronger, more aggressive neighbors, the Keeper said. We estimate that without intervention at least 12 species will be extinct within the next century. Jake felt sick. And we could prevent that? A Guardian fleet could prevent that, the Keeper said. Ships and crews with the authority to go where they're needed, when they're needed, with whatever force is necessary to protect the innocent. Danny Price was taking notes furiously. What would this authority actually include? The Keeper touched the book again, and more text appeared. The Guardian Clause grants authority to intervene in any conflict where non-combatants are threatened, to use necessary force to protect peaceful species from aggressive ones, to enforce galactic law in territories where local authority is unable or unwilling to do so, and to make battlefield decisions without requiring approval from the Galactic Council. Battlefield decisions, Lisa repeated. You mean life and death choices. The hardest choices imaginable, the Keeper agreed. Choices about when to use force and when to show mercy. Choices about which species to save when you can't save them all. Choices about whether someone is truly innocent or truly guilty, Mitar. Foster looked worried. That's a lot of power for any one species to have. It is, the Keeper acknowledged. But consider the alternative. Currently, When aggressive species attack peaceful ones, the galaxy responds with diplomatic protests and economic sanctions. Meanwhile, innocent people die while we debate proper procedures. A holographic recording began playing, showing a recent pirate attack on a colony world. Jake watched helplessly as peaceful aliens were captured and enslaved while their distress. Calls went unanswered. The colony sent 17 requests for help, the keeper said. The Galactic Council debated the appropriate response for 6 months. By the time we authorized a peacekeeping mission, half the population was dead and the other half had been sold into slavery. But if there had been a Guardian fleet in the area, Lisa said quietly, the pirates would have been stopped within hours. The keeper confirmed. The colonists would still be alive and free. Jake studied the displays showing current threats throughout the galaxy. How many situations like this are happening right now? Dozens, the keeper said. Pirates, slavers, resource thieves, territory grabbers, species that prey on others because they know no one has the authority to stop them. Dr. Bell looked up from her analysis. And you believe humans would use this authority responsibly? We believe humans would use this authority the same way you've used every other power you've been given, the keeper said. To help others, even at cost to yourselves. The book on the pedestal began to glow brighter and new text appeared. The Guardian Oath, Lisa read. I swear to use my strength not for conquest but for protection, my weapons not for destruction but for defense, my authority not for gain but for justice. I will stand between the innocent and those who would harm them even unto death. I will judge fairly, act swiftly, and remember always that power without mercy is tyranny, but mercy without power is meaningless. Every human who accepts Guardian authority would need to take this oath, the keeper explained, and be bound by it for life. Danny Price looked around at the team. What happens if we say yes? Your ship, the Harmony's Edge, would become the first vessel of the Guardian fleet, the keeper said. Captain Morrison and his crew would have the authority to intervene in conflicts throughout the galaxy. Ambassador Grant would become the first Guardian commander, with the power to deploy Guardian forces wherever they're needed. And if we say no, Jake asked. Then things continue as they are, the keeper said. The galaxy remains peaceful but unable to protect its weakest members, and we wait for another species that might be capable of handling this responsibility. How long would we wait? Lisa asked. The keeper was quiet for a long moment. Our xenobiologists believe that humans may be a unique evolutionary development. The genetic and cultural factors that created your species' protective instincts may never occur again. Amy Foster stepped forward. So if we don't do this, no one will? It's possible, the keeper admitted. Which is why this decision is so important. Lisa looked around at her team, then back at the glowing book. How much time do we have to decide? As much time as you need, the keeper said. But while you're deciding, remember that every day you delay, more innocent people die who could have been saved. A soft chime sounded throughout the chamber and the keeper looked toward the exit. The council session is resuming. You have a choice to make, Ambassador Grant. Return to the normal council meeting and pretend you never learned any of this or stand before the assembled